I created this modules folder in the last video. What's the idea behind modules? The idea behind modules is that in our store here, we may have certain parts which belong to different parts of our application. For example, the counter. The counter and all the related getters and actions belong to our counter.view file, our another result view file, and so on. But the value here, for example, is only used in our app view file. Now, I will admit that is a bit of a constructed example because it's very short, but you will see it in the final application we built in the next module in this course, where we will actually have a separation which makes much more sense. Anyways, to show the idea behind modules, it would be an idea to split up this store.js file into two different modules where each module has its own getters and mutations and the state and so on. So for this, I will create two new files in this modules folder. The first one I'll name counter.js and the second one will get the name value.js. Let's start in the counter.js file. Here, I want to create a constant named state, and that is an object. It actually is the same object as here, though of course I'm only interested in the counter. So I'll pull that out of here and instead add it here. So counter initially is 0. That is my state. In our store, we also got some getters related to our counter. So let's copy them or cut them. And let's create a new constant here. Getters. Getters now also is an object where we do have our getters inside. Now we can do the same for our mutations. So let's fetch them too here. And let's add our const mutations, which also is an object which now holds our mutations. Well, you guessed it, we can do the same for our actions. So let's fetch our actions from there. And now let's add a new const actions file, constant here. Add the actions in there and the actions are finished. Next, we want to export that all in a default object so that we only have one export in this whole file. And this object has the state, and I'm using this ES6 shortcut where this will automatically be expanded to state. But since it has the same name, I can just use state here and just use mutations and so on to use all these constants to automatically create key value pairs where the key is state, mutations, and so on, and the value is the state constant, the mutations constant, and so on. So also add the getters here, of course. And with that, I'm exporting an object with all my counter-related Vuex components, let's say. Now in the store.js file, I'll leave the value part in here for now. We could outsource it into this value.js file here, could hold value Vuex parts, but I'll leave it in the central file because I want to show something else with that file later on. However, since I now exported so much or outsourced so much into my counter.js file, I somehow need to merge it into this central store in the end, because one thing doesn't change. We have one central store. Even though I do have a state here in my counter.js file, that is only kind of temporarily. I want to merge it into the central store in the end, because that is something we'll always have, a central store with a central state. How do I get my counter.js state, my counter.js getters and so on back into the store.js file in my central store? By simply adding a new property at the end, modules. Now modules is a JavaScript object, and here I simply add all the modules I have. Now I have only one, but that's better than nothing, so let's import counter from modules counter, so from this counter.js file. And then again, I could say counter : counter, but since the name and value is equal, I can simply say counter and let ES6 handle this. And with this, the module is now imported, and if I hit save, you will see that if this reloads, it still works as before, but now with this split up over multiple modules, which already makes it easier to read. But we can improve this even more, as you will learn in the next video.